Oh yeah,
Wow,
she
what
also
a cool
sucks.
afterthought.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Afterburners podcast, followed by me, Alex, and my friend here, co-host, Brian. And we're all happy to have you here, and we're ready to talk about some stuff. And hopefully we come out of it a little bit more knowledgeable. So, yeah, today's discussion topic, I kind of wanted to start off with some like more philosophy. So I'm kind of curious about what you have to say about this, Brian. So, um, what do you think about when you think about curiosity? And like, what is maybe the purpose of curiosity? Why are people curious?
I believe curiosity, although it is a form of wanting to seek knowledge, I think the primary drive of that curiosity is out of a selfish need of wanting or needing to understand something, which is why you become curious and wanting to seek out the answers to whatever it is that you're questioning.
Awesome. I love that answer. Wonderful. So I guess my question to you is like, are people curious these days, or do you think people have sort of stagnated from curiosity? Do you think there's a potential death of curiosity, or it's, or do you think people are typically naturally quite curious?
It's a really good question.
I would say I would give you a little bit of mine I kind of think that
Go for it.
I think curiosity has been like kind of diminished a bit because we're told to, live a certain way, think certain things, live a certain life. So I would say it's kind of unfortunate that, we're not really told to be very curious these days. At least in the like educational system. I love education, but like we can all use improvement. Each one of us.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with you. Although I would have to disagree with your point on education, because I believe that ends up falling onto the teacher and whether or not that teacher wants to bestow this want and drive to learn.
Sure. So you bring up a fair point there. Yeah, actually. So like, is it the responsibility of the individual to be curious? I think that to be kind of true rather than the teacher. Maybe
it is definitely the responsibility of an individual to go out and seek this curiosity. However, whatever starts that drive can be completely external.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially when the thing you're curious about is most of the time something that is external.
Okay. But you maybe would agree that some people in our modern day and age are typically just maybe stagnated curiosity.
Oh, absolutely.
I would say, okay. Wonderful. Okay, so we're kind of in alignment there. So, I've been doing some reading of philosophy recently, and the reason I sort of bring up curiosity and questioning is Socrates and the Socratic method. I think it's as if I were to think about a person who represented maybe an incarnation of like what it is to be curious and questioning, Socrates is kind of the guy I would kind of think about. He's madly curious. And in a way that is like super, how do you say it? Yeah, he's just this force of like constant questioning and just really trying to get to the bottom of things.
What I have here, just quickly looking up Socratic method, rather than lecturing, the teacher or questioner adopts a position of ignorance to stimulate students to rigorously examine their own beliefs and assumptions through a disciplined process of probing questions.
Very good, yeah. And so he's sort of claiming that it's best to come from a place of like, I don't know, right? And that's where the most learning can happen is like, it's like, being honest about like what you don't know and what you do know. And that, extreme honesty in that sort of idea. But I just thought this would be kind of a fun little icebreaker for like this idea of curiosity and what it means to be curious, and are people still being curious? I would also go further to say that curiosity is sort of just built into our being. I would say from birth as babies, you look at a baby and you see it just like interacting with its environment, and obviously you can say it's trying to learn. It's very curious. It's very, you know, it's trying to learn all the time. And it'd be really sad for somebody to go up through life and lose this curiosity element to them, because it's baked into our early existence. And I think it's something that should try to be preserved throughout life, as opposed to rigorous, just kind of authoritarian, believe this is your narrative.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you should question things. And that's kind of what critical thinking is. You use your mind
Absolutely.
and try to get to the bottom
Critical
of stuff.
thought.
So
Always important.
yes, absolutely.
I wanted to go back to your one of the questions that you asked about curiosity like dying off.
Okay.
I would say I feel like there's limited knowledge, but I also believe we won't know everything.
Sure.
For example, I don't think we're ever going to know if there's a God or not.
Okay.
We don't know if there's an afterlife. We don't know if there's ghosts or not. People say they have evidence, but science is all like, nah. But at the same time, people still believe. And I think that there might be a point to where we have learned a lot, but that's just really far in the future, and depending on how far humanity as a species gets. But I think it's kind of bottlenecking, if that makes sense. Because if you think about it, like 300-400 years ago, we still had explorers. There were uncharted seas, uncharted land. There was so much to explore and discover. And I think that was a very driving force of curiosity in a lot of the people back then. I mean, you got Lewis and Clark, you've got Columbus,
massive exploration.
Like them or hate them, they had the curiosity to explore. That's all I'm really saying here. But
so maybe
we learn more, sorry, just let me finish. We learn more and more about the world and make more and more discoveries in science and math and physics and everything, that knowledge and the curiosity for that knowledge is now fulfilled. It's been solved. You no longer have to be curious about this. And I feel like it's starting to bottleneck.
Right. So I would even add to that maybe a little bit. So you suggest back in history, this big exploratory thing, new things all the time. And maybe you could say, maybe like as time progresses, we figure out more and more.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not necessarily that we're losing things to discover, but maybe the things that we discover are sort of plateauing. So like they're kind of becoming more refined. Yeah, maybe that's a good way to think about it, because like you had early discovery and you're making these huge bounds and strides, right? But now we live in 2025, and now those strides are like a little bit more minimal, but like you're still making strides, right? But it's not like you're discovering a whole continent.
You're basically saying the answer to your question raises more questions.
Yeah. Okay. But we could also segue this into like AI and artificial intelligence, and how that will be sort of a vessel for understanding as time goes on. And I know you and I had discussed briefly a little bit like enlightenment and how that could be helpful with people and AI and alike. And we can get into that later. But these are really interesting sort of ideas, and how sort of knowledge and progression has happened throughout history. I think there's I think with AI we can continue this discovery, even if humans have sort of plateaued or stagnated a little bit. We can create more of a it's like we want to keep progressing no matter what. So maybe we'll go to space, and maybe we'll go further out and expand and more stuff. So it's all really optimistic stuff to uncover the truth.
Definitely.
And so maybe I'll circle back a little bit, and what is the purpose of curiosity? Well, I would say it's to learn. And what are we really trying to learn or understand about life? A lot of these, what is it that we're supposed to understand and get? is kind of at the crux of all of us people, I think, is like we're trying to find peace with our situation as a humanity. Um, and that takes many forms. The individual has to sort of figure that out for themselves, and likewise as the society. Um, so yeah, um, in my notes, I talk a little bit about empathy and apathy, as I think they are sort of really important aspects to a human. Um, and so my theory on this is sort of like it is just better to be empathetic, and it is worse to be apathetic. This is kind of my general argument. Um, and it's really hard to say why, but I just think it's good. And I'm curious to hear what you might say about this. We can delve into it a little bit more too. So,
Um, you know I always hate taking it to a political or religious
sure,
space.
sure.
But what are your like main thoughts on the recently deceased Charlie Kirk?
Oh, yeah. It's a one point of importance, I think. I really like Charlie as a person, as a thought leader. I would say I resonated with him.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated his discussions and many of what he sort of stood for. Um, of course, I didn't believe everything that he said,
Right,
but I
right.
believed a lot of what he said. So, um, yeah, I think it's really tragic, and
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
suppose the way I sort of interpret it is like since I had a lot of my own sort of connection with him, like when he died, I felt like a part of me also sort of died, um, just because we had I don't know really like I never met the guy, but
Right,
I
but
felt like
you felt
I
like a
knew him.
connection.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
due to related interests. Well, I do want to just say in 2022, Charlie Kirk stated, I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think
mm,
empathy is a made up new age term that does a lot of damage.
okay,
So
interesting.
I just wanted to bring that up and ask you what
Yeah.
you think about that.
Well, I would say I disagree on that point, but I can see what he's maybe saying is that like if people are too emotional and they don't have a hold on their emotions or aren't able to navigate their emotion, it can be a big problem, obviously. Um, so I don't think the answer is apathy. Um, to be apathetic might save you from some emotional turbulence, you could say, but at the sacrifice of love and empathy and compassion, right? It's really important to be compassionate, I think, as a person, as a being. Um, of course, I just have my own affiliations with like what I think to be important, but I would hope that people value the importance of compassion and love and empathy. I would say it's probably at the core of our being and our society, whether you're religious or not. Um, so we're very social beings, regardless. Yeah.
Uh, okay. I also want to ask about your thoughts on the third aspect of, emotion, which is
Okay.
sympathy.
Oh yeah, sympathy. So the way I sort of understand sympathy in my definition is like you understand empathy, but you choose not to. You're still apathetic. You're not engaging with an emotion. You can understand it intellectually, um, but you don't necessarily reciprocate. Is kind of how I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but you know, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with sympathy. It's good to have understanding of stuff.
Yeah. Empathy is feeling with that person, sympathy is
Right.
feeling for that person.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
There's
That's a
not
good
like
definition.
a clear connection. You're kind of more distant. It's just like, yeah, I feel bad for
Right.
you, but I can't exactly like share that experience with you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can understand it,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not with it necessarily. Yeah, and maybe
Yes.
that's kind of the role of a psychologist, or they have a lot of understanding of emotions, but whether they with you or not, it's another thing. Here's my other theory. Okay, this is one that's maybe a little bit interesting. So it is my idea, or not necessarily my idea, but it is an idea that I would say as somebody becomes more aware of things, or more conscious, or focused on stuff in their reality, I think, to me, if you develop the awareness, you also sort of by proxy develop empathy. you know it's kind of a loose idea that, you know as our understanding expands, and our vision, and our ability to look at others and things outside of us, we naturally sort of become more appreciative, or caring for the things around us. But on the flip side of this, if we are not necessarily looking or super aware, if we have sort of a narrow vision, um, perhaps it could be you could have more apathy, or less care for your environment or your surroundings. It's kind of my general sort of theory. I'm just kind of curious to hear what you might say about that.
Ah, so now you're curious.
Yeah,
uh, just give me a second to kind of gather my thoughts here.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Take your time.
So I definitely agree. Having this like more narrow-minded view where you aren't like going out and having experiences or acknowledging experiences that you are having, I definitely that can lead to someone being more apathetic
Mhm.
because you just have that limited understanding. You have that limited narrow view. You know.
It's almost it's almost kind of selfish. Almost, you can kind of relate it maybe to the ego a little bit. You're kind of egotistical,
Yeah,
or
I
narcissistic.
think yeah, it definitely goes with like narcissism and cynicism,
Okay,
because
yeah.
like that's just kind of how those people are, they just have this main view of
Hmm.
how everything is, and because of those views, they're just kind of apathetic. You also got the classic, oh, nothing matters, you know,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
usually
Philosophy.
yeah, definitely a philosophical point that a lot of people have tackled. Although I don't agree with that, just due to my
Sure.
own beliefs and objective
Yeah.
morality.
Yeah. So
But
maybe you would say it's just kind of bad to be that way, like apathetic, narcissistic, selfish. It's just bad, kind of.
I wouldn't
Maybe that's too reductive.
I yeah I wouldn't say it's bad.
Mhm. Less
Uh,
ideal.
I would say yes, as like it has negative consequences of having those types of viewpoints,
Mhm.
especially just in the field of being sympathetic and empathetic, for people in general, rather than having that view of just like nothing matters. We all gonna die one day, so why does it matter if someone dies, if someone gets murdered, if someone gets killed,
Yeah.
whatever, whatever.
It's almost
And
kind of like a devaluing of life, almost, or things around you. Kind of
well, yeah, I
extrapolating it a
mean
bit.
because I mean that's just the position of that belief. It's that there's no point in anything.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
life doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Your life doesn't matter.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, I know
It
I'm
can go
making.
downward.
I know
Yeah.
the primary link I'm making with the empathy and sympathy is like with funerals and someone dying. Uh,
Hmm.
but in like if someone's well, pet dying is also kind of a funeral.
Yeah.
It's hard to think. Like if someone's mean to someone, like you witness bullying. If someone has that position of that nothing matters, that it's
Right.
just yeah, okay, yeah, you got bullied. What did you do to deserve it?
Hmm. Hmm. See, I would maybe be on the, yeah, we can talk maybe a little bit more about the significance of existence. The fact that we exist sort of means that, well, you could have two arguments here. You could be the cynic and say nothing matters, I exist and nothing matters. Or you could say, I exist and everything is significant and everything matters, right? So, yeah, and you can have these kinds of people that you can imagine would be, kind of against life, or, people that are kind of pro-life and they want to be here and they want to do stuff, and they, and then people that are just kind of going through it and they're having hard times, and they're, I also want to be understanding about the cynical people out there, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there in their life that are cynics that are good people,
Oh,
and I want it to be
absolutely.
known. It's not good to be too reductive. It's just kind of, and it's important to get the nuance. And just because you're, isolated and cynical, that could be, a whole bunch of circumstances that put you in that thing.
Yep.
So it doesn't mean you have to remain that way too. So that's kind of optimistic. But yeah, it's good to, really think about it, and like, we are here, and we should probably understand that things are significant rather than not being significant. I think I'm in the group of like, we should try to think of things as if they were significant. Um, and sometimes that's really hard on the individual. Um, yeah, a lot of people can, yeah, it's just, life is hard, right? Let's just put it there. Life is hard. And
Kind of,
trying
so.
to figure it all out is a difficult type of thing for anybody. So I wouldn't blame a person for being overly cynical, right? Because we've all been there in some sense. And hopefully we try to grow from that and not remain in cynicism, but develop through our cynicism into a place that maybe we can enjoy being here. Maybe we can enjoy life. Hypothetically, in an ideal world.
They just have to be curious to seek that out.
Right. So that is actually an important component. The curiosity sort of, is kind of optimistic, where you're searching and understanding and
Mm-hmm.
and learning about stuff, and finding that it's interesting, and finding that it's dynamic and purposeful and is significant. I would say for anybody in a rough place, it's good to just kind of go walk out in nature. Not necessarily needing to do anything, but just look at nature and just take it all, soak it all in. You know, um, and I would say the answer sort of lies within that. It's not in words necessarily, but it's in what we feel. It's in the quality of what we feel.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So,
it's been fun so far.
oh yeah. Going back to like what you were saying about like babies kind of like being
Hmm.
curious, that whole, infant to toddler stage, it's definitely obvious that those kids are curious. But um you also have to remember that curiosity is, it's hardwired into our brain because it's a survival instinct. We have to um, learn about our environment and be able to understand it in order to, survive in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
environment that you've been placed in. But
Oh yeah.
so I think that's always just kind of going to be a factor until you can somehow upload all the knowledge you need to into a baby.
Yeah. Matrix
What do you want your
download.
baby to know? Let me just
Yeah.
type it in here.
Right. Or you could
Rocket
get,
science,
the
okay.
designer babies, and the, before the baby's born, you just,
Designer babies.
yeah, dude, that's a,
I mean, think about it. Cloning. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely possible. I mean, we've been able to also splice.
Oh
We
yeah.
got sheep that are now able to
Mhm.
basically produce silk
Mhm.
because we put like the spider thing in their udder or whatever,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
develop spider silk rather than milk,
We
which
got
I think
some
is cool.
we got some very cool technology in the works.
Oh yeah, oh
Absolutely.
yeah.
Uh,
But
so yeah.
and also the curiosity being a survival instinct is linked to the dopamine.
Mm. Yeah, I guess
because
that makes sense. Reward function,
yes, because
Yeah.
like it's just built into the nature of a human. That's why it feels good to eat. Your body is
hmm
rewarding you for giving it fuel.
hmm And sex.
Well, I mean,
Throwing it out there.
yeah, I'm just saying more of what everyone experiences. Sex isn't
Yeah.
always
Oh yeah, yeah.
uh
I'm just saying. Usually, you get a dopamine
the
rush
I
when you
well,
have
yes,
sex.
yes, yes, you do. Because it needs to feel good so that way you want to reproduce and multiply because that is
Yeah,
the main drive
yeah.
is
It's a purpose.
spread your
Yeah, it's
genetic
motivation.
material. Oh, interesting
Absolutely.
fact. Interesting fact. Did you know if there are multiple women participating in sexual intercourse with the man tends to stay more aroused longer because the brain is going multiple chances of progeny passing on.
Wow. Okay,
Which
that's
I thought was
interesting.
interesting because
Actually.
usually most of the
Yeah.
time, it's all right, I'm going to bed. you
Yeah.
know? But
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
find that interesting. Just a little side tangent. You know how I am about my little
Yeah.
fun facts.
Oh yeah, I like that one. It's very good. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot about we can kind of get into like Sigmund Freud because he was all about sexual activity and the masculine and the feminine. He
And
talks
cocaine.
kind of about yeah.
And cocaine.
But oh yeah. Yeah, he was out there, man.
Yeah,
But
the mom
yeah, he
sex
had
complex, bro. That's a little weird.
yeah. 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 But I think there's might be a little bit of truth in kind of what he's trying to
Oh,
allude to
oh, absolutely. I
about
mean,
these
he was a doctor, wasn't he?
oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
mean, he was definitely smart. I don't know
mhm.
when exactly he started using cocaine because at that point, not so credible. But he's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
made some grounds and discoveries in the field of psychology, especially in the
Oh yeah.
sexual aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. He said he kind of like paraphrasing a bit, he kind of believed most, if not all things were some sort of like sexual repression trying to be expressed somehow. I thought that was kind of an interesting, theory that he had. Um, but like maybe big part of life is trying to like resolve our inner conflict or inner tension in some sense. And I think there's some deep truth in that if you read
Mm-hmm.
into it a bit. Um, so yeah. Yeah, we can. I wanted to talk a little bit about, sort of Taoism and even the dichotomy. Um, let's see. Let's see here. What did I write down? Yeah. So this idea of the dialectic, right? Um, so this is very fascinating to me. So essentially, it kind of starts off with this guy, Heraclitus, back in like 500 BCE, ancient Greece, and he was sort of proposing this idea that like you have these interplay of like forces, and he called that sort of the flux, right? And this constant flux of interaction. Um, and so he was trying to say how like, well, he's trying to like observe it and talk about it. But he was also he's also the guy who made up the term logos. If you ever heard of the logos, sometimes it's used within psychology to sort of talk about some underlying structure. Um, so there's a lot of that happening. But yeah, this flux is sort of a dialectic, and a dialectic is two sides interacting, and you're trying to make sense of it all. And uh, let's see. So this is an interesting sort of idea how often it takes the polarity of like a masculine or a feminine, sometimes positive or negative connotations. Um, but later on, we have this other guy named Hegel. He was born in 1770 and he died in like 18, was it 1831, I think. Yeah. So he lived kind of an interesting life, but he was super big in this whole philosophical idea. Um, he brought up this idea that you have sort of three stages of understanding. You have your thesis. This is kind of like your general first argument that you propose. And then you have this antithesis, which is this opposing argument that goes against what your thesis is trying to claim. And then the end goal is this is the most important part, is the synthesis within. So like you take the thesis and the antithesis, you combine them and you get a more cohesive synthesis as an understanding. Um, so I would say personally, this is a very cool heuristic for trying to understand things. And yeah, it kind of relates back to that whole Socratic approach where you question something, you have something emerge, and then you develop your response and you try to get more and more refined to the whole, the synthesis. So anything you want to sort of say about that, find interesting about that?
That was a lot of knowledge, kind of just dropped on me, because
Yeah.
I'm not super well versed in Daoism,
That's
but
okay. That's fine.
I definitely understand what you're saying
Mhm.
about the like yin yang, the two interacting
Yeah.
opposite forces that are
Hmm.
always going on. Uh,
Hmm.
so you definitely tackled a lot of the philosophical aspects of it. I do want to ask, what about your religious interpretation of it?
So if we kind
Because
of
it
review,
is a religion.
yeah, sure. Okay. So like let's talk about Taoism. Let's hone in on this
Yeah,
thing because
absolutely.
I
I
I
would
like
love to
Taoism.
gather some more understanding.
Sure. So there's this idea sort of within Taoist philosophy that everything is the Tao. Okay. If you're like a
Yeah,
high level philosopher, is like you observe Tao within all things. It's the whole universe essentially. And
the
so
way.
the way, yeah. And it's trying to point out to people that let's give a thought experiment. Let's say you can imagine the yin and the yang symbol. You got the little dot in each one.
Yeah.
And you say, let's try to separate these two away from each other. Let's just try as a thought
Okay.
experiment.
Okay.
Um, so you get the white side and then the black side. But remember, so you separate them out, but you still got a little bit of remnant left in there. You still got a
Yes.
little, you know. So what it's really trying to say, I believe, is that you can't ever truly separate things. Okay. And this can be a hard thing for people to really accept because some people want to believe that you can isolate things and that, there's a pure essence of a thing. But the Taoist approach is kind of saying no matter how hard you try to separate anything, you can never truly separate it fully. And I think this is at the core of what they're trying to say. And there's even a bigger truth than that. It's that the yin and the yang are, what are they trying to do? Like if you have them dancing together, maybe one is bigger than the other for a moment, and then they switch sides, and the other is bigger for a moment. But they're trying to come together. Is kind of my idea. Is like they want to be one with each other, and in a way, they kind of are one, because like when you really think about it, you affect the one side and it makes an effect on the other side, and you affect the other side and it makes an effect on the other side. So in that sense, they really are one entity. You following here?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, even though the yin and yang is black and white, it's not saying everything is black and white. It's gray.
Yeah.
For all the good, there's a little bad. And for all the
Hmm.
bad,
Hmm.
there's a little good.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, that's what those
Precisely.
dots mean. Even
Hmm.
if you separate them, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. At all the good you're looking at, you can always, depending on what perspective you look at it, you can find a negative. And at all this bad
Absolutely.
stuff, depending on how you look at it, there can be good.
Hmm. And so at the core of this, we just cannot reject the other side. And that's really what it's saying is you have to see it for its whole part. And to reject the bad, a lot of people like to reject the bad. Most people are fine with the good, that's fine. But like it's
Human
understanding the bad.
optimism.
Yeah. And sitting with discomfort almost, and like really understanding that the yin, the dark, is just as important as the yang, the light. And it's kind of within human nature to sort of like good and be uh, deny bad, and some we strive for good, try to limit bad. Of course, you have like more sort of global ideas, like kind of like masculine order, feminine chaos. I know I don't want to get political here either because I care about everybody. And I think in the Tao is trying to teach people that you are both, and over emphasis on one side is just it's not right and it's wrong. And so if you're really trying to be a Taoist, you are really trying to integrate both sides. I mean, that's kind of you are understanding that they're complementary at their
Okay.
nature, and you're trying to not reject anything essentially. And so most people like to reject stuff because it's like they have their own ideas and they butt heads, right? But if you can get past that rejective element, then you can start to integrate, and that's kind of the goal. Is the more it's also kind of what I think about love. It's kind of like a love story where like yin and yang, they're trying to be together, and you can imagine in a relationship, where there's these dance of energy, the masculine and feminine. They're trying to be together, integrate, and it doesn't always work out. Sometimes there's tension, sometimes there's discord, and hopefully you can work through that discord, and you know, but hopefully not a whole lot of butting heads is the idea. Is like you can minimize the headbutt, and that is a good type of thing.
All right.
So
I have a small attack on your position. It's either going to be a challenge for you or I'm just lacking some understanding.
okay.
So you're saying that with, Taoism, it's good to see the. You want to see both the good and bad in everything, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So with that stance, why should you care about everybody?
Mm. Well, we all live in this world, in this universe. Whether we want to, you know, uh, be with this globe. It's like you're sort of taking the position of like, why should I want or allow integration with, things? It's like, well, you kind of have to live here, it's like you have to breathe the same air, you have to live on the same land. And so we have to sort of like, if we're really honest with ourselves, we are forced into this sort of coherence. And maybe that would seem a little bit, nice. A lot of people might not get down with that, and some people want to be isolated more. Um, but the real truth is that we can never truly be fully isolated as much as we might try. And people can go down this whole pathway of just trying to avoid and reject stuff, and it's kind of a destructive path. Um, but the more we can do to like accept our situation, accept life the way it is, even if it sucks, and like just find a way within ourselves and within our society to like live together more cohesively, I think that's just a better sort of argument, a better sort of ideal to shoot for, rather than trying to separate everything out and isolate
Right.
everything out. It just doesn't really work, if you really get down to it, I think.
So would you say that those that aren't getting down with that idea are the ones that have that narrow-minded view, that are cynical, narcissistic, that are apathetic?
Well, in a way, yes. I would hope that people can get through that cynicism, because I've been a cynic before. Like, I've rejected things before, and I'm sure many people do reject things. But the more we reject things, the more we're saying, I'm ignoring an aspect of life. Okay. And if everything within life is somehow significant, including the bad, we should definitely not ignore or disbelieve that it exists, because it does exist. It's kind of relevant. As much as we might have an emotional response to that, it's like, well, kind of have to get over it. It's hard. It's hard on a lot of people, and I do have sympathy for a lot of people that are struggling in this sort of state where they're maybe feeling isolative, or maybe they are sort of rejecting, but they're rejecting for a reason. They're rejecting because it's probably because they've been hurt, or something within them doesn't want to accept it. They're seeking rest, or they're seeking some sort of peace, I would say. And yeah, it's a very difficult situation. But for those types of people, I would just tell them to keep hanging on and do what you can to say yes more than say no, as hard as that might be.
Okay. Part two. Do you think you have to be empathetic or sympathetic? Sorry, I tripped over that word for a second.
It's all good.
Do you think you have to have those qualities to truly be a Taoist?
Kind of, yeah. I think, well, I would view that as spiritual progression. If you maximize your empathy, you're kind of progressing socially and spiritually. I would say that religion's kind of a social construct idea.
Yeah.
It's kind of its
Man-made.
purpose is, yeah, its purpose is to sort of help people live together in a way that is not super conflictive. So yeah, any attempts to try to integrate more and have the desire to integrate more is kind of a nice place to be. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be seamless, right? I talk about integration, and it seems like it's some easy thing. No, it's actually really hard. It's there's going to be conflict a little bit. There's going to be tension a little bit. But if you can minimize some of that, it can really make it much more easy. And I think the highest sort of thing within that integration, you can think of it like harmony, or like love, in a sense, where it's like this desire to integrate is kind of this love for all things, and in a weird metaphysical way, or just a true, I don't know, truism. Yeah. So, and
I feel
hatred.
like continue. Sorry.
Oh yeah, hatred seems to be this desire to say it's just rejecting. Hatred says, I don't accept that. And it's fine to not accept everything. We have to think about things, but um, hatred is a real emotion, and we should try to understand why we hate certain things, and but not let hatred, you know, control us in a sense. We should understand that hatred tries to isolate, hatred tries to separate and say, that's not me. It's kind of what I think about, maybe a little bit about like racism. It's like somebody sees another different being and they say that person's different than me, and then it kind of creates this division. It's a source of division and boundary. And the more we focus on like how we are different, really separates us out. I think we should strive to see how similar we are. A lot of people like to say how I'm so unique and I'm so separate, I'm so special, and but like we should really say there's a lot of things that a lot of humans, no matter how different we are, a lot of us have a lot of similarities. And I would say it's good to kind of think about those similarities, no matter who you are. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on separation. Well, if you even think about science, there's this emphasis on trying to get your facts straight and separate out and create boundary and metrics. So in that way, it's positive, but sometimes it can be just negative. Where if we're overly focused on separating everything out, it's making a weaker sort of situation.
I can see that. I just want to say, I think you put hatred, like how you explained it, I think you explained it brilliantly.
Oh, thank you.
Hatred is rejecting.
Yeah.
hatred is isolating. I
Yeah.
really like how you said that, because I was trying to think for a second. I'm like, well, no, but then I was like, well, yeah, actually, because
Yeah.
if you hate something, you are rejecting what that is.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you
You
hate your
deny it.
parents, you are denying those are not my parents.
Hmm.
I do not see them as my parents. Or
Hmm. Yeah.
you hate a certain political party. Okay, I hate this side and I reject and all of their ideology, and if I find one, I'm going to isolate them.
Hmm. Yep.
If anything, at least from me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely well put. Um,
Thank you.
so you brought up religion again, and I know I asked it earlier, but I think we kind
Hmm.
of went off topic a little bit just because
It's all good.
we're just having such a great conversation.
Yeah.
I wanted to just again like your thoughts on the religious aspect of it.
Oh, like love and hatred within
No,
religion.
no, like of Taoism, because if Taoism is
Oh,
it's
okay.
stating that, and the way is an indescribable cosmic force,
Hmm. Hmm.
which in my mind that's basically a god,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
cosmic entity that no one can describe.
Sure. Yeah, we can get into that. So I would say that the traditional Taoists, they didn't necessarily take it as a religion.
Right.
At least that's how I understand it, is they didn't really deify it or make it a god. They just kind of thought of it more as a philosophy and how to live well. Uh, a lot of Taoists would even probably say it's more of a heuristic or a way to like, yeah, maximize well-being and maximize, quality of life and that sort of thing. And so later on, people sort of made it more of a religion. You got Buddhism that sort of extrapolated from that. Um, and people obviously, sort of make it more of a type of religious sort of idea. But like, yeah, um, this traditional sort of idea, I think, was rooted more in sort of like how to live well, how to maximize well-being, how to understand maybe the universe a little bit more deeply, and to live with the universe as opposed to against the universe. And yeah, it's a lot of that sort of idea. But yeah, I mean, it would make sense that if you were to unify with the universe, there'd be kind of like the human sort of ascending to the deity, to the greater cosmos. But yeah, it is kind of cosmic in the way you sort of conceptualize it. So yeah, there's some truth in that.
Okay. Uh, and then let's go ahead and dive into like the whole empathy in both the philosophical and traditional religious sense of Taoism,
Hmm.
compared to I guess to other religions. I was gonna
Sure.
say
So
monotheistic, but you brought up Buddha, so I'll include polytheistic religions.
yeah. So absolutely. So I really think, yeah, the way that the maybe traditional Taoists would sort of view it is that it's much more of like a philosophy. It's much more of a um, yeah, less deified in the sense that I sort of went over this already, but like, yeah, eventually, I think really Taoism is good for any religion. So no matter whether you're Christian or Hindu or Islam, I think you can sort of incorporate Taoism in any sort of. It doesn't really conflict with a lot of things, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about this sort of doctrine is that like you can um, you can understand more just by kind of practicing and using it. But it does have like emphasis on like ways you can live to be more in alignment with things, and it's just kind of like they talk about pillars of Taoism and how like if you follow these sort of general sort of pillars, you can live a better life. And so I think, yeah, Buddhism sort of makes it more mystical, in the sense that, like, when you fully realize the Tao, this is a tricky one because it gets really mystical really quick.
Mm-hmm.
When you are able to fully understand and realize the Tao, you sort of become mystical in the sense that you can see more, you can interact with it more if your understanding deepens. Um, and so, but the thing about that is you don't necessarily want to glorify it you don't want to idolize it to an extreme degree, because then you're becoming imbalanced again. And so this whole idea is just to become more balanced. And so if you're using Taoism as a methodology for power seeking, it's not a good methodology for that. It's all about, yeah, it's like, in a certain way, it is getting closer to the source of creation, in a very practical manner. It's more of like a guidebook, and
Uh-huh.
that's also how I think about yoga. It's kind of similar in that aspect. They have a little bit of cross cultural understanding, as well as I think Egyptian philosophy. So there's definitely a lot to unpack, and I don't even think we'll hit any if not most of the ideas of Taoism, but it's a very dynamic philosophy for the way of life, for sure.
Okay, I can understand that and respect that. Did you watch that video I sent you on deep thinking, deep thinkers?
I just saw a little bit of it. I was kind of busy, but
No, you're all good.
uh, it
Highly
seems
recommend you,
interesting.
you watch it tonight because you were talking about like having a deeper understanding
Mhm.
and like kind of seeing more in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think that can be achieved by like I don't want to say only deep thinkers, but like only to those that are willing to think deeply on that.
That's a good question. I sort of believe that I want to believe that anybody can really do it if their heart's in the right place. Some people might believe that some people are just gifted and smart and, genetically superior. They can learn faster, learn more. Um, and maybe I would bring up another thing in education and curiosity and of this sort. There's this idea in psychology called the intrinsic motivational principle. It's this idea that if somebody has a natural interest for something, if they're sort of pulled by it emotionally, they're gonna probably learn it a lot easier. And I think there's been some studies on this. I can't exactly bring up the numbers or anything at the moment, but um, if you're more intrinsically motivated, you're gonna probably retain the knowledge longer. It's gonna be easier to learn the knowledge and talk about the knowledge, as opposed to somebody who doesn't really align with the thing that they're learning about. You can imagine if you're not enthusiastic, or if it doesn't appeal to you in any sort of way, you could still probably learn it, for a test or something, but you're going to come into like some conflict where you're learning it, but it doesn't really resonate with you, but you still have to memorize it. And, you can get through it, but it's very, rough, you know? So it does have to do with learning. And, I think it's a good sort of framework um, to sort of cultivate the curiosity, in the sense that you should learn stuff because you want to learn stuff, not because you have to learn it or obligated. Um, I think that's a good way to sort of go about it. And actually, you can stop somebody from learning and kill their curiosity if you force knowledge into them and say, you got to learn this because I told you to. That'll have the negative effect of making somebody less interested and less curious. So if we can find a way to embrace the curiosity and, um, make things more emotionally interesting to people, then they could align more with these things, and it would be easier to learn and easier to be interested. I think there's just a lot of conflict when we're talking about people and learning. Is like most of learning is just kind of like, do you really want to learn it, or are you like learning it because of X reason, right? So that's kind of my idea, is this intrinsic motivational principle. I call it IMP. So yeah.
Okay. So that kind of links back to what you were saying about hatred. Because if you're hating this thing, you're not going to want to learn about it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just blanked on my question.
Shucks. So it happens to the best of us, man.
I know, right? Shoot. Okay. Yeah, okay, now I remember. So, like, this hatred, we kind of related it to that, like, narrow-minded view that we were talking about. You know, not fully cynical or nihilistic, but, you know, that kind of idea of, you know, not caring and stuff. Do you think that for learning, you should be, in a way, empathetic for these ideas?
In a way, I think you're right. You know, we learn stuff. Yeah, sort of. We learn the stuff that we care about in a general sense. And maybe the real question to ask is like, what is awareness? You know, and here's an even deeper question: can we expand our awareness and what we understand and know, in the sense, like, can we see more, and can that awareness also diminish? You know, can we come from a place of like being sort of aware, and then we minimize our awareness and sort of reclude? And I would say maybe the answer is yeah. I think the awareness can grow and expand, and it can also diminish and sort of come back smaller. And maybe part of development, you know, whether you're going from a baby to adolescent to, you know, young adult and so on, is sort of hopefully an expansion of awareness and understanding, and hopefully continual expansion throughout life. And maybe this idea of refinement, you know, you become more confident in what you understand, and more you can definitely see more than a baby can. You know, a baby has a limited understanding of things, but, you know, develops its understanding through time. So hopefully we can preserve that understanding, but it means that we are curious, and if we're curious, we are wanting to learn the things that we are wanting to learn, as opposed to not necessarily being curious or not really giving a shit about stuff in life, you know? So it is that, yeah, I think there's a comparison here about the significance of life and how we view life. It will make us want to learn if we care about it. It will make us not want to learn or avoid it if we don't care about it. And yeah, very, very broad sense.
Do you think self-awareness is also important in that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're getting to the crux of it. Yeah, self-awareness is hugely vital. If you're not aware of the self, you can bump into things very easily. And yeah, you know, you limited vision, limited scope. So if you are able to expand your awareness, you can probably avoid some pitfalls that you normally wouldn't be able to avoid if you didn't. So yeah, I think it's always just a better idea to be more understanding of stuff. Like, it's just better to have more knowledge, you know, to like see more things. Like, it's useful, as opposed to having a limited framework where you can only see so much of the puzzle. Yeah.
Kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into one of the aspects of self-awareness, metacognition.
Okay. Yeah. Thinking about thinking, reflection.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's also interesting. Yeah. You're you're developing, you know, this idea of like how to expand the awareness, and that's one way to do it, is really looking deeply at the self and trying to uncover something that maybe you don't fully understand yet. that's kind of what therapy is. I think if you're doing therapy right, is the goal is to know more about who you are, and once you know more about who you are, well, now you can navigate life easier, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the problem of life is people are just confused and they don't know necessarily who they are. They haven't really asked those questions to themselves and said, "Who am I?" And that can be like an uncomfortable space for a lot of people. You gotta come into contact with your rough side of life. You have to be honest. You have to be really honest. And that is really hard for a lot of people. To be just so blatantly honest with everything of your being, and especially in front of a person, right? So trying to understand the self, that's some of the oldest wisdom there is, I think. Know thyself. It's written, I think it's in the Bible, right? I don't know for sure, but like self knowledge is key. It is very key. Absolutely.
Know thyself is an ancient Greek maxim inscribed at the oracle at Delphi
Oh
that
wow. So it's even
encourages
older.
self knowledge, introspection, and an understanding of one's place in the world. For Socrates, it was the first step to wisdom, involving an honest examination of one's principles, beliefs, and the limits of one's own knowledge to achieve self improvement and a more meaningful life. Key
Wow, well
aspects
said.
of know thyself, self awareness. There we go.
Yeah, I really think the Socratic method and Socrates himself really stood for a lot of what knowledge is. And I think if anybody's really genuinely curious, they should take a look at Socrates and yeah, delve in deep to the being. You know, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and it's always just better to know more about who you are. The thing is, a lot of our focus in life is externalized. So like we're getting signals all the time from our stuff in our environment, right? But when do we ever just like sit down and like look at ourselves and just like think for a minute? Um, we live in such a rapid paced world that, it's just hard to do that. But I would say on the flip side, it's very vital to do that. And yeah, listen to this idea. I think, yeah, Socrates, he's got some good philosophy. And it's almost unfortunate because I don't remember really learning much about the Socratic method, Aristotle and Plato. I mean, we might have briefly reviewed that in school, but like if we're talking about learning and education, I think these should be really big. A big part of schooling is like we should talk about Socrates, we should talk about Aristotle and the philosophy. But sometimes I think a lot of people think of like philosophy as almost being like a mental masturbation in some sense, where it's like, yeah, like you're saying all these things, but like, what do you do? Like, how's it practical? And I would say there's practicality to it. It's you might have to dig a little bit, but I've felt like personally it's really rewarding when you can uncover those hidden questions within. But it does take some digging, and you know, yeah, people have to figure that out for themselves essentially. So, but it's really core to knowledge and understanding is really thinking and testing and questioning. Yeah, it's huge. It's kind of unfortunate that it's really not encouraged a lot, I think. And I think it's almost there's a sense that like you shouldn't question or you should just sort of accept and get with the program. And I hear a lot of that sentiment in our modern world. And I would just urge people to just keep going. Absolutely. Express yourself fully. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Absolutely. Freedom of religion. Just keep going. It really sucks really, really bad when we're unable to do that. And you got that whole speech policing and dogmatic idealism and authoritarianism, and like it gets really bad really fast. And so that's why it's so vital for people to be able to express and speak their mind. And again, I go back to Charlie Kirk. He was somebody who was humbly talking and just trying to come to the truth of stuff most of the time. And yeah, I think we should think about what he was trying to say and what he was trying to express. And
Open-minded
yeah.
debate.
Yeah, open-mindedness, don't be so rigid in your, it sucks when people become really rigid, and it's like hard to talk to those people. Yeah. So, yep. I think we made a lot of progress in this discussion today, hopefully.
Indeed. Another question.
Mhm.
Do you think that through metacognition, like if someone is
Mhm.
becoming more and more self-aware about their thoughts, do you think they can learn more about themselves?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And not only that, when you learn about yourself, you also learn about people, because people are kind of like you. So like you understand that everybody feels love, everybody feels sadness and pain and all the expressions of life. But the more you understand yourself and how you respond to certain things, you could probably extrapolate a little bit and say, oh, if I respond to things this way, how would another person respond in this similar situation? And so, like, by learning yourself, you're also learning many things. I would say you're learning what it means to be human in that respect. So
So
yeah.
through like metacognition, you think that helps like people develop situational awareness and
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
Of course, you don't want to be, narcissistic in this respect. You still want to care about, your environment. But if you do focus inward, you can definitely gain a lot of knowledge about what it means to be human, what it means to be you, right? In respect to everything else. And so it makes you a better navigator, is kind of how I'd say it. It's because like some of us are navigating life and we run into a lot of pitfalls. Um, and so, how do we avoid pitfalls? Well, we can learn a lot more about the external world, but we can also learn more about the internal world, right? So, if we learn about who we are in respect to everything else, well, now we don't have to be confused about our being. And now we can come from a place of discernment and confidence rather than confusion and, like, that kind of thing. So, you're sort of moving throughout life with um, a greater understanding of like who you are in respect to everything else. So yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Do you
Oh, sorry.
do you think that like too much self-awareness can be complicated by ego?
Yeah, the ego's a big one, and it does complexify things.
And, and do you think that having a huge ego might mean that you're not very metacognitive?
It does kind of imply that. So like if you have a large ego, it means that you can't really focus a lot on other things, sort of outside of you, because your ego is so large. It's difficult to, well, it messes with your senses in respect to other things. So if you have a smaller ego, more in check, you can be more sensitive to things around you. If you have a large ego, you know, you might not be aware of everything that's happening around you. And I would say it's better to be in a place where you're more aware of things as opposed to not aware of things. And the ego is a tricky one because to have a healthy ego, we need to be able to manage it well, and see if it's coming from a place of arrogance or you know that kind of thing. Are we trying to prove something to ourselves or to someone else? A lot of the times it's really just trying to say, I'm significant in some way. And if we already understand and know that we are significant, as opposed to being told we are significant, it will change the sort of landscape. But yeah, it's just better to like sort of avoid selfishness in the respect of like understanding, because it gets in the way of understanding, I would say. You're emphasizing your sort of own dogma in sacrifice of understanding the greater picture, the greater whole. If you have a smaller ego, you can maybe see more of the fuller picture because you don't have this big disruptive distraction in your way. That's the best I can really put it into words, I think.
It's going back to like that narrow-minded view.
Yeah.
Because with how you're explaining it, yeah, because the ego, if you're constantly feeding your ego and constantly thinking you're higher and mightier than those around
Mm-hmm.
you, you're having a self-imposed idea of who you are without really knowing about you. You're just I think
Yeah.
it's like you're kind of in a way trying to uh what's the word? Uh you're trying to like in a way prove that your imperfections are actually perfections.
I think that's a
Having
good
a
way of saying that. Yeah.
huge ego, you're not going to think that, you're flawed in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really pay much attention to, you know, many of the thoughts and the thinking that you do because
Right.
you already have this self imposed idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also, it kind of goes back to that Socratic idea of like, what do we know, really? Like, what do we know? And we could probably agree that like we don't know everything, okay? But egotistical people might say, "No, I know everything," or they might believe that in some
But I do know
some
everything,
way.
Alex.
Yeah. I think the way I really think about it is like I like to think of it in this way. People have approximations. And they can get closer to the truth with those approximations. Um, but will they ever get to the full truth with their approximations? It's hard to say. Um, but we get these pieces of the puzzle and we try to extrapolate the whole picture. Um, but that's really hard to do because there's a lot of things happening and we have to kind of trust our data. And so a lot of like sort of information theory, almost, we're kind of getting to this a little bit, is that on the data level, we have to be very careful because any disruption to the data, any holes in the data will create problems down the line, as you can probably imagine. So it's kind of about preserving the truth of the data without messing with it or meddling with it. And then that data is sort of transformed into packets of information, and hopefully those are verified and good. And then that information is kind of transformed into knowledge, clusters of knowledge and understanding. And then those clusters of knowledge are eventually, hopefully, distilled into wisdom. And this whole process is about like sort of preserving from the lowest level to the highest level without disruption. And that is extremely difficult to do because every time it transforms from data to information and information into knowledge, you're probably, if it's not perfect, you're probably going to have a little bit of tweak, and it's going to shift the whole thing a little bit. It's going to shift the whole thing a little bit until you get, you ever see the game where you have like telephone, the little kids, they'll just, they'll start off with something and then it'll, the next kid will, do something, and by the end of it, it's completely something else. That's kind of how the brain works, and that's how, like, if you're not careful, you have to be very aware to preserve the truth of the knowledge, and it takes a certain level of discernment to be able to do that. So yeah,
and
it kind
and
of
that
wraps
and
back to
yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it just goes back to know thyself, which
yeah,
Socrates believed to be one of the first steps to, you know, gaining this knowledge you were talking about.
yeah.
Good
Absolutely.
talk about this. We have like 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Earlier you said you wanted to talk about game theory. Now, I know there's a lot to talk about with game theory, but what
Mhm.
are some like main things you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So yeah, game theory is really fun. Very playful type of idea. Um, so I think the idea in game theory is that like, well, of course you have games and there's rules in the game, and you can have very complex games and very simple games. Like I like to start off with Pong. Um, it's just barely easy to understand. You got one side and the other side, and they're bouncing the ball back and forth, trying to get into the goal. And that's a type of game. And so, like, you can ask, what are the things you can do in the game? So, like, what are the rules? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? What is the goal or the objective? So you can sort of define elements of the game, and you can almost get into simulation theory a little bit, and like you can create simulations that have environments, and you can navigate these environments as a player. Um, and there's a whole bunch of things going on here. It also game theory sort of bleeds into logic and probability theory quite a lot, because with probabilities you can deduce certain things. If this thing happens, you can imply another thing will happen, um, and sort of the causal chain of things. So with game theory, it creates this really cool heuristic and tool that we can gamify life, because you can think of life as like a really complex game. There's a lot of rules to the game of life, and you as the player can make decisions within the game of life. And if you've probably heard the terminology of a zero sum game. So the zero sum game means that like you have a winner and you have a loser, and it can only be one side or the other side. And then there's, of course, non-zero sum games where you can have one person and another person both rise in this sort of idea. So it's a lot of math. It's a lot of trying to define the limitations of the game. So once you can understand your sort of constraints, then you can really start doing stuff with the game. But it also sort of relates back to awareness, because when you're thinking about game theory, you're sort of you're becoming more aware of the game itself by defining your constraints. So you make metrics, you make numbers, and then you say, oh, I can play the game this way, or I can play the game that way, and I can try to optimize and maximize, and try to win the game of life.
Right.
But it's a very dynamic field of math that involves other subsections of math domains. So yeah, it's a cool topic for sure.
I'm a little interested in this Nash equilibrium,
Oh yeah, I
where like you are in a situation where all the players, or at least the rational ones, uh,
mhm,
where their current strategy and decision making, uh, it shouldn't change because there's no benefit to changing it.
mhm, mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, it
can
means that
can we
like
can we
you sort of
dive into that a
plateau.
bit more?
Yeah, it's like,
Find
well,
that
if you can think
interesting.
of like an economic system, you got trades and stuff, and supply and demand. So you can imagine over an extended period of time, things sort of plateau. A lot of things tend to plateau because needs are sort of being stabilized, and once you start trading a lot, um, eventually you sort of come to a place where your trades are not as significant now later. Well, they're still significant, but their impact is kind of diluted and plateaued because you've already done a lot of the trades beforehand. So early trades, a lot of those trades have big impact, and then the economic situation sort of stabilizes throughout time, and then you kind of get this, like Nash equilibrium, where like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You sort of like dilute it a bit, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep on the game. At least that's kind of how I conceptualize it. I could be wrong there, but that's what I think of it.
And it makes a lot of sense. Like right now, I'm kind of relating the whole idea of game theory to Squid Game, because if you think about it, as soon as players, in Squid Game start acting irrationally, that's when like more bodies than needed start piling up.
Right. Yeah.
Like I understand in each game, someone's probably going to have to die, especially if it's a game like Tug of War where half players are eliminated and stuff. But if you're working rationally and you're trying to hit this Nash equilibrium where everyone's just trying to survive and able to help each other survive, it increases that chance of a more maximized game. Because the whole idea of game theory is you're wanting to be rational and make the decisions in order to maximize benefits and minimize losses.
Yeah,
it's strictly for gains.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to play the game, and the idea is if you understand the game, you can play it much better. If you don't understand it, you can play the game, but like it's not going to be optimal. And so your theory is to be more optimal, to be more rational, is making the game a strategy. And so yeah, that's sort of really at the core of it. And I think it's within everybody's best interests to play well. I don't know why somebody would. Well, maybe I do know why. So some people just don't want to play the game, and that can mean a lot of different things. But if it is in our best interests to try to play the game well, if we can, that's the ideal, I would say. And so it's a very helpful heuristic for trying to understand stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that holds true because, like you said, it's good to have, as much knowledge as possible about the game. And in season 2 of Squid Game, Gi-hoon used that knowledge to help many players survive red light, green light.
Yeah. Knowledge is power.
Yeah. And that maximizes the survivability if you're going for survivability rather than increasing the money pot, which is just another dynamic thrown into it, because it's just another variable in how are rational people going to act.
Here's the other cool thing is that you change the game, you change how players play it, So the game really does matter on a foundational level and how it's played. And sometimes you can manipulate the game if you find like a loophole, you you find a glitch, if you're playing a game in a video game, you find a glitch and you're like, whoa, why does that happen? What's up with that? And if you like sort of delve into it, you can kind of understand that the coders coded it this way, and like, you can manipulate these minute sort of nuances of the game if you have a good understanding of the game itself. And
I disagree. It leads to speed running.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you could have glitches in real life, you can imagine how many people would be speed running.
Yeah. If you can somehow, bend the matrix, I guess you could say. Because, if it is a simulation, it is possible to find glitches and exploit it.
Yeah. It's cool stuff.
I think there's also glitches that you can find in certain, like, systems. There's people that have null on their license plate, which when entered means nothing. Like some guy, I think their last name was Null, and they had that on their on their car. So any invalid parking ticket automatically charged him, because he was null in the system. And anything that was invalid was labeled as null, which the computer reads as nothing.
So it charged him like $17,000 worth of like
Oh,
parking tickets
no.
and stuff. Yeah, he had to like go to
Yeah.
court and fight it and stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's a
then
lot of
there's
there's a lot of
also
stuff.
those people that were able to like in a way hack ATMs where they were able to pull out massive amounts of money that they actually didn't have.
Mm. Glitch in the
Yeah,
system. Yeah.
glitch in the system and exploiting it
Mhm.
because you can maximize your gains by exploiting that glitch.
Mhm.
And then you get caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you're not no, you can't abuse glitches."
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose there's an aspect of morality, as we gain more knowledge and capability and power. Like with great power comes great responsibility. In the classic words of Uncle Ben.
Amen.
Um, you
God
know,
rest his soul.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. But like if we begin to see how the game works, then absolutely, it's Spider-Man. Yeah. But yeah, like of course, greater understanding just gives us more to work with, and the more we can work with, the more we can sort of avoid bad things and sort of optimize for good things. But if we're not coming from a place of knowledge, then it can seem like the game is very mysterious and strange, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know who I am, and I don't know where I'm going.
Know thyself.
Uh, yeah, yeah, know thyself. Yeah, yes.
It's
So
all coming back together, baby.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
cool how much like relation we've like just with everything we discussed, it all like links back to things that we already talked about, and then it links to things that we talk about later, and then that stuff
Right.
just links back. I think that's just
It is very fun.
cool because by acknowledging that you're able to in a way diversify all this knowledge and be able to connect it and have in a way like you're kind of making like a game map out of that.
Yeah,
You're
almost
you're,
like a
you're
network graph. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's
it's
also
it's like
graph theory.
your mental skill tree
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way, and by able to connect this you're like, oh, I'm able to utilize this skill with this skill, and by combining them you can have this new idea or this new thought or theory uh, that can either expand your knowledge or have you question what you thought you knew.
hmm And that's kind of I want to go back to the dialectic approach too, because this is really relevant here. Is because so typically, if you're a person navigating life, the way you sort of uncover more knowledge is somebody else kind of comes in and tests your knowledge, and then you have to kind of rebuild and reconsider and stuff. But like the cool thing about the dialectic and especially Hegel's approach is that what if you could test yourself before you've had that other opposing view come in? Like it'd be nice if you could like refine your understanding before you put yourself in that situation where you look dumb and you look, like you don't know a lot. And that's why I really think it's good, because with the Hegel's approach, you can present thesis, and then within your own self and with your own mind, you actually ask, well, what is the opposite opposing side of this, the antithesis? And then you can already do that process by yourself, and you gain synthesis before you even talk to somebody else, right? So in that way, it's really nice to get a more greater understanding of the whole if you practice this idea beforehand and test and scrutinize your theories before actuation. Um, and so this is a really cool approach, especially when you have people that are creating all these antitheses to you. It's a little bit more of like, oh, this guy really thought out what he's talking about, Yeah. And people respect that, I think. People really like when you have a more, holistic understanding rather than a fragmented, one-sided argument.
Yeah.
You kind of want to have a more broader argument. You want to see the bigger picture if you can. It's not always easy, but it's worthwhile. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all fun
Absolutely
stuff,
agree. Yeah.
man.
All right. Okay. Weird stuff's happening. My tea, like my other one of these, just randomly went whoop.
Magic.
Gotta go now.
Spooky.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and end it there
Yeah.
for this
Sounds great.
session of the Afterburners, your necessary side supplement to the afterthoughts. I have this will come out before the next afterthoughts, I'm pretty sure, but that should be the next one coming out after this. It's in the works. It's very long, but I'm very happy with the conversations and stuff we had in that.
Sounds great. Yeah.
'Cause
It's always a joy.
I think we talked till like 2 a.m. or something. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. But thank you everyone so much for spending some time out of your day to listen to us just ramble about stuff. Good, important stuff if you think so. If you have any questions or comments, there's a comment section for that. Or you can go ahead and send an email to snaz at snazzyyogi@gmail.com, which is in the description as always. You can send all the fan mail, malware, and questions you have to that email address.
No.
Don't send them viruses. It's a joke. All right. Just send them questions, fan art, comments, concerns, whatever. And hopefully if we get a good amount of that, we can have a nice little segment at the end where we can tackle some of those questions.
Yeah. Maybe hopefully we'll make a Patreon.
Hopefully.
I was just thinking maybe one day Patreon, yeah.
one day Patreon, yes. Hopefully. If
It's always a pleasure.
It is. It always is. If you did like, please leave a like. If you didn't, I guess dislike. Do what you want. You got free will for a reason.
Freedom of will.
Subscribe if you wish to stay up to date with the afterthoughts and our episodes and stuff that we do. Check out our stuff and the other host stuff. That's also down in the description. Yeah, I think that's about it. All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you for enlightening me on Daoism and some stuff on game theory. Very informative. So thank you, and thank you again, everyone, once again for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.